the weight room for me from this point forward. If folks will go ahead and introduce themselves in the chat box for me. Thank you for some of you who've picked up and know that's kind of our ritual. We will be saving the chat box as well as recording this session today for folks to have as reference while you complete your attachment D, or for those that were unable to participate. We'll have it listed on our website, as well as share a recording of this presentation with you after the session concludes. By tomorrow, Shannon and our office will be sending you an email with some updated materials that Blair will be sharing with you today, as well as that recording. But feel free to reach out to any of us if you have questions. I'm going to give it another minute since we still have a number of folks joining and logging in from the weight room. If I'm a bit on repeat, I apologize. We've got a really great attendance today. We had over 70 registered for today's session, district staffers and directors who are interested in understanding and learning a little bit more about the attachment D process itself. I want to spend a few moments talking before we toss it to Blair Gordon with the department to talk a little bit about our admin ops topics and our admin ops committee. Many of you have been plugging into those Zoom sessions that we've been doing more regularly over the last year, speaking on a lot of COVID topics, as well as earlier this year, you worked on your annual plan of work, of which the board has approved. I'm going to ask Susie Brown to come off mute and share a little bit of work of the admin ops committee. But first, caveat it with, many of you might have recognized that next Monday, we have typically a admin ops committee meeting on the calendar in the afternoon. We do not have a formal agenda, and at this time we're thinking of postponing that meeting unless there's interest from folks on the phone of actually just getting together and having a space to ask questions, talk about any topics that you'd like to speak to. If you have topics you want to speak to, drop them in the chat box or email Susie and myself. If there aren't, we'll forego Monday's admin ops committee meeting and push it back a few weeks. We are working with a CPA we have put on retainer for districts to use, 100 hours in retainer, as well as QuickBooks beginner and advanced trainings for this summer. We really want to have that meeting with the CPA to talk about how to roll that out and meet them and understand their work a bit better so that they can come to that admin ops committee meeting that we plan next and have a presentation rollout on how we'll really work with districts on this matter. So having said that, it timed May 10th with a little bit of their tax season ending and needing a break. So for that reason, we're looking to push it back a couple weeks, and we'll keep you posted unless you have topics you want to speak about informally and just connect over Zoom. Susie, are you able to share a little bit more work on admin ops?
Yeah, you covered pretty much everything, but we've been meeting and having just informal conversations about the challenges we're all facing in relation to COVID and procedures for, staff being in the office and in the field. So it's really a great opportunity for staff just to bounce ideas off each other and hear challenges that we all seem to have in common. We've came up with our annual plan of work, which we'll be discussing in detail at our next meeting. But we're really excited about the trainings coming up with the CPAs and Terry. I think it's going to be really beneficial for all of us. But we really, we want to hear your feedback, topics you would like to hear. We're trying to have these calls maybe like every other month just to keep in touch with each other. So, if something comes up and you'd like to discuss it during a meeting, shoot Kendall or I an email so that we can make sure it's on the agenda. I guess that's about it.
Susie, I know this session is from 1 to 2 today, but if folks want to linger on the line a little longer to talk about any topics or questions they might have admin ops related that are outside of attachment D, or if you have specific attachment D examples that you think are fitting to ask, Blair will hang around a little later than the formal presentation too to help answer.
Oh, and I will just put a plug out that, if you have topics you would like to have addressed at Graves Mountain training, I know they're going to be meeting soon to kind of start planning for Graves. So, if you have an admin ops topic, please shoot us an email on that also. And that's all I have.
I don't see any questions in the chat box or topics at this point, but I'm encouraging you to if you can, turn on your camera, come off mute, ask any of us questions, Susie, myself, Blair. This is a much more informal training session than some of the ones we've held in this virtual world, and really want this to be an engaging effort. So I will be monitoring the chat box, and Blair trying to help you multitask with your presentation and ensure that those questions are covered. But throughout this presentation, feel free to really just pop off and ask Blair those direct questions too.
Yeah, thanks for that. Oh, go ahead, Kendall.
No, I was just going to say, any questions at this time about admin ops general topics or the postponement of Monday's committee meeting items like CPA rollout or the revamp work we're going to do on the personnel management manual? Otherwise, I'm going to toss it to Blair and really ask her help and guidance to get us through understanding what attachment D is and the time frame that districts need to complete it. Blair, I know I've shared with you the registration list throughout the last few days, but know that it has increased even since what I sent you yesterday, with a handful of even newly elected directors on the line. So having some background explanation of what attachment D might really be helpful. That was the only question I had submitted ahead of time yesterday evening, of understanding where we even started with this process.
Thanks, Kendall. And yeah, that's definitely the kind of background of where we started, and where we are now is certainly the first few slides of my presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And okay, I have not screen shared on Zoom before, so if there are technical issues, I apologize. Also, many of you know that the state computers do not have video cameras on them, so I'm sorry that you can't see me while I give this presentation. That it feels kind of weird not to be in person doing these. You know, normally we'd be at some location doing a May admin ops training for 2 days opportunity, and there'd be a lot of great networking, and I'm really sad we can't have that this year, but we'll do our best. So like we've been talking about for a while now, the attachment D is what we kind of call the budget template process. It's called the attachment D because it is literally attachment D to your admin and ops grant agreement. Similar that we call the attachment E because it's actually the E attachment, your grant agreement. So really original names here, but this budget template is what we're going to go over today. A number of you on the call are familiar with this process, but we have several new staffers, a lot of new directors, and we just felt like it was good timing to do a training, which we haven't done in a few years on this process. So like Kendall said, I'm going to start the presentation and with a little bit of introduction to what the attachment D actually is. It was initially developed in 2012 by a stakeholder advisory group, which we affectionately call the Summer Study Group, or the SAG. And it was devised because we needed to examine the funding needs for admin and ops of districts. There wasn't a lot of compiled data to really support district funding requests and to really show that districts were being underfunded. And so we put together the summer study, put together this budget template in an attempt to capture the funding needs, especially for technical assistance, to implement VAX. Of course, a lot of this was driven by the Chesapeake Bay WIP implementation and meeting our 2017 goals and now our 2025 goals. And but as anything we do in Virginia, it applies and of course assists with all of the water quality impairments across the state. So we ask all 47 districts to do this. It has developed into an extremely useful tool. The attachment D is used as an advocacy tool with the General Assembly members, with the Secretary of Natural Resources, and with administration leadership. It's used, we provide this information to the governor's office, the secretary's office, DCR higher leadership like Clyde Chrisman sees this information. they get the general roll up of like the total needs across the state. They don't necessarily see everybody's individual attachment D, because that would be a lot of overwhelming information. But it has become a really useful advocacy tool for supporting the funding requests that, especially when DCR puts in our budget requests and asks for a significant amount of money to support the districts. And, you know, as Kendall has mentioned in years past, this has really honestly been a tool that helps show just how successful districts are with the funding they have. When we hit an economic hard time, it's really come as a protection to you guys. It's really helped protect the funding and kept you from getting, unfortunately, cuts when we've had some really hard state revenue years. So it really has been a very successful advocacy tool for all of the groups involved with advocating for the districts. But, you know, a couple years ago, we actually, the State Soil and Water Board wanted to reevaluate the base technical assistance levels. So we used the attachment D to kind of look at where base TA is now and where base TA kind of needs to start moving in an attempt to provide you guys with a little bit more secure funding rather than that TA that can fluctuate so much based on cost share allocations. You know, to provide you guys with the ability to fund one full-time conservation technical staffer, and at minimum. And so in fiscal year 19, districts filled out the FY21 attachment D. And those results were actually sent to an allocation subcommittee that developed the FY21 base TA allocations. Now those base TA allocations are set for 2 years. So those are the base TA numbers that you saw in your FY21 grant and that you will see in your upcoming FY22 grant. And then the Soil and Water Conservation Board, the state board, has committed to review the base TA allocations biannually using the attachment D as a reference. So every 2 years, the State Soil and Water Board is committed to reviewing and reevaluating base TA levels based on your attachment D numbers. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to revise your base TA numbers. You know, but we are going to take things into consideration and potentially make adjustments. So these have really become the tool we always said it was going to be. You know, we started this process in 2012 and said, hey, one of these days, this is really going to be guiding how our grant agreements and how our allocations roll out. And now it really has become that document. So it's gone beyond advocacy.
Before you move on,
Yeah.
I just got a direct question, which I think you've answered, but I at least want to make sure that person's got it clarified. I got a direct question that said, how can I use it as a lobbying tool for the association, and yet DCR also use it for lobbying purposes? And I guess you use that term lobbying from DCR loosely. Is they're using it as a way for the agency to make their budget requests, because the budget process itself starts in the August, September timeframe. So they're using it to recognize and understand what districts need to make that request. We're using it on the back end after the governor's budget has been developed to actually advocate and show here's the expressed interest districts have. So I guess I wanted to clarify and see if you had any further clarification also to offer this person's question about how both of us can use it as a lobbying tool.
No, that's exactly right. DCR does not use it as a lobbying tool. We use it as a budget tool. And like you said, Kendall, you use it as a lobbying tool to help support the budget requests and what's in the governor's budget, or to support a request for an increase in the governor's budget. So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, and hopefully that cleared up the confusion.
You're right. This has become such a useful tool also for originally when we first developed it, Blair, you're exactly right. We thought the very first year that this would be the way to show how and why districts need more money. And it's taken a little bit longer to get there, but in the interim, at least allowed when other agencies were getting cut that districts didn't. And the base TA is a true win for the work of the attachment D.
Yeah, you know, it's weird for me to think of a time when base TA didn't exist, but it is such a useful tool for districts and their budgeting when they go in to start their budgets for the next year. You know, at least you always have an idea of what you can expect moving forward, what staff you can continue to keep on board. And that's our goal, is to keep staff, you know? So that's what we're really trying to do here, is help you guys keep the staff that you need to run these programs.
Claire, I know this question is going to put you deep into the thick of probably your next slide and really getting into what attachment D is. And if not appropriate now, just keep it in the back of your mind to ensure we can answer it as it moves forward. There's a question in the chat box now that says, when are the state agencies going to combine efforts so that we can capture DEQ requirements for districts as they regulate the Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, which should also be budgeted? So I guess to this point, it is a great tool that DCR uses, as does the association, but how do we ensure other items that cross different state agencies are captured into this moving forward?
Sure, we do actually have some data gathering sections in the attachment D for Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act, for some for those 14 districts that have dams. We do have a section for dam rehab and repair that goes beyond DCR funding. I mean, that includes sections like environmental education, and just we have an entire section called other programs. And that kind of captures VCAP and 319 projects as well. And that we use as kind of a data gathering system so that legislators like Kendall can use that as a lobbying tool to show folks just how much other work outside of DCR funding districts are doing. And if other agencies, you know, want to use that, and it's certainly something that we can share with them, you know, it goes on to show, you know, the work the districts are doing for those agencies as well. I mean, districts really do so much more than just what the DCR grants put in place. So you're so much more than that. So we do have those tools to gather that data. How those other agencies use them becomes up to them. But we do share them across the board, you know, on occasion, and we can certainly make sure that the other districts, and especially the specific program leadership, get this information as well. So I hope that helps. And when we get into the weeds of the document, you'll see those sections and kind of the examples I've prepared for those as we walk through how to fill out the form itself. Oh, Kendall, you're muted.
Sorry, inevitably, I do that constantly. How does DCR share that information that is collected relevant to other agencies like DEQ? Do you provide that information template to DEQ? And if not, how do we ensure that it is communicated outside of just the association's work? That's a question in the chat box of someone commenting that they've talked to DEQ and did not seem to know about the data capture. So if there's a way we can improve that communication process, that would be great.
Yeah, we can certainly. I don't know that there has been a lot of sharing across agencies at this point, and it's data we've been capturing for a few years now. And we can certainly share that information with DEQ, especially with the 319 program and DEQ leadership. And that's not an issue at all. I mean, these do become, as districts and part of your grant agreements, these do become public documents. So, you know, especially we work to put together a rolled up version of the attachment Ds of all 47, the totals of all 47 districts. And those data fields do capture, you know, all 40, you know, whoever puts in data into those cells. And so we can certainly share with them the actual budget template. It's a pretty straightforward document. So with a little bit of explanation and maybe a one-on-one meeting with some agency leadership, it would be easily explained as to what that data means. And we'd be happy to share it. So I'll make sure that we do. Okay, I'm gonna just keep going for now, and as more questions pop in, Kendall, just interrupt. As you guys know, I can't see the chat box while I'm presenting, but that's why Kendall's reading these to me. So we're gonna jump into some helpful tips. And then after we go through these helpful tips, I'm actually going to show you an example budget template that I've put together, and kind of talk you through, how I filled it out. But some helpful tips are, for starters, take this process seriously and teach your directors about it. They need to know why this is an important process. It can affect your base TA allocation, as we have seen in FY21 and in FY22. And this is the year that we are going to, when we're starting to prepare your FY23 grant agreements, this is the year we're going to review and reevaluate those base TA allocation numbers. So it really is an important document for us. Just outside of the advocacy tool, this year it could potentially affect your base TA allocation. Just for those that have done this process in the past, we have had a few years where the cost estimates that were sent out by DCR, the level funding and the above, the increased funding levels, they may not have changed from year to year. Or they didn't change by much, and so you may not have done a lot of updates to your attachment D over the years. But this year, the numbers are different. The HUCs have changed, the non-point source assessment has changed, the the cost share levels that we're using have changed. So you can't just, it's not one of those years where you can just take last time's attachment D and make a few adjustments to it. You really need to start from a blank template this year, because it really is very different numbers. Not that you can't use your old one for reference. Certainly, by all means, you can do so, but please don't submit the 2021 attachment D to me again, because it will be woefully under budget. So you don't want to do that. And I cannot stress enough, and you will see me, I will say this several times throughout this presentation, even after this training, read and follow the instruction document. Go home and go back to your office, wherever it is you're working from these days, and read that document before you fill it out. And as you're filling out the document, read each section that you're working on in the instruction document, because we really tried hard with the peer review committee and several DCR staff over the years to make that as user-friendly of a document as possible, to really walk you through it step by step. So we hope that it looks a little daunting, but I promise it reads faster than it looks. But the instruction document is a valuable tool when filling out this template. One thing that we see a lot of is FTEs, especially in your RMP and CREP sections of the document. It's kind of hard to realize what 0.1, even just 0.1 FTE is 200 hours a year. So really pay attention to what the FTE figures mean for you and what that means for your programs. You might need 1, 2, 3 full-time FTEs to run your Chesapeake Bay cost share program at $5 million. But if you have only one CREP contract, I don't want to see one full-time employee for a $6,000 CREP contract. And we do see a lot of quarter FTEs, 1 quarter FTEs for very small CREP or very small RMP amounts. And even that's a little high, truthfully, because a lot of the time, that's still 520 hours. And if you're spending 520 hours on, 1 or 2, 3 CREP contracts, that's too many hours. So really stop and think and kind of calculate out what those FTEs should really be. Especially the CREP section with the FTEs is the one that the peer review committee comments on the most, because like I said, 0.1 of an FTE doesn't look like that much on paper until you realize that it's actually 208 hours. So just keep that in mind as you're filling this out. There's a few reminders in there about that throughout the instruction document as well. make sure you request at least one full-time admin employee and one full-time technical employee. Every district should have at least one person to cover those items. So on your level funding, you know, really make sure that you have at least one for, you know, each of those sections. Now your technical employee might be split between, you know, your cost share, your VAX program, your CREP program, your RMP program. You might get one FTE spread across those, but make sure you have, when you get to that grand total section, at least funded one FTE admin and one FTE technical employee. Otherwise, you're definitely cutting yourself short. And one of us from the peer review committee or myself will be calling you saying, hey, you need to request more, which we actually do get from time to time. Like, we want you to make sure that you are fully functional and fully funded. And I cannot stress enough the note section. Off to the side of the actual spreadsheet is a column for notes. And the more you explain, the better off we are. The less you're going to hear from me or one of the peer review committee members, especially if your increased numbers or one of your level funding numbers looks really high. If you just put a few notes on the side that kind of help explain why that number might be a little high, you know, we're going to probably leave it alone. So that the notes section really just helps us better understand your thought process and why you're asking for this amount of money. And it's really very useful for us that are reviewing it. A couple more tips. Please do not include the purchase of a vehicle in this template, anywhere in this template. Vehicle purchases are, you know, you should be thinking about vehicle purchases years in advance. You should be saving up for those vehicle purchase with a reserve fund. You know, you can fund those vehicle purchases from a number of places, but it should not be included as part of this template. It's also mentioned in the instructions, but I just, you know, we've gotten over the years, we do still see people trying to put vehicle purchases in there. You do have mileage. Mileage covers your basic maintenance and gas and things like that, your federal mileage rate. So that's where we capture your vehicle expenses. But again, this is not to advocate for a vehicle purchase. The spreadsheet will only let you put in whole dollar amounts. It is locked down. If you try to put in a decimal amount of like $1,250.25, it will pop up an error message for you. So just round up to the nearest dollar. The only place you can use decimals is the FTEs, because obviously you might only need 1/4 of an FTE or 0.1 of an FTE. So those do go out to 2 decimal points. And please only enter numbers in the cell. We don't need dollar signs or anything like that. No symbols, no letters. If you put in anything other than a number, it will mess the formulas up and they won't work. So it should throw an error when you try to do that as well. But, you know, only numbers go in the cells. And then there is a note section where obviously you can enter notes. They're not locked down. Most importantly, increased funding cells should only have your additional needs input, not the total of your level funding plus your additional. So the example I put here has to do in the operational section with staff training and travel. At level funding, you have a staff training and travel need of $2,500. With the increased funding, maybe you have an additional half a staff person who needs, you know, to attend a bunch of training. So you have an additional $2,000. Increased funding need is not your level funding plus your increased funding. So it's not $4,500. It's just the $2,000 of your actual additional need. And that applies to the entire increased level, increased funding column. Only put your actual additional needs, don't summarize your current level funding needs with your additional needs. Kendall, how are we looking on the chat box?
Perfect timing. I was going to say, you do have a question in the chat box that says, I find it extremely hard to give FTEs to RMPs and CREP. Some years we are inundated with RMPs and some years we have none. How can DCR RMP folks help districts with this? Can they give us numbers ahead so that we can better budget?
It's hard for us too to really gauge what the interest in RMPs is going to be. I think what we have kind of suggested in the past is to, look at have you had any historical RMPs on those years that you've been really inundated with 5, 6, 10, 12 RMPs? Think about, when do you think they might actually be fully implemented that you need to be doing those inspections? Which ones have you, in the past you've actually reviewed that maybe haven't gone to inspection yet, and now they're probably going to come up for inspection for to get their certified RMP status. They're probably coming up for inspection soon. So I would go ahead and calculate those in as expected RMP inspections. I think if you're a district that has kind of consistently seen some RMP activity, you can count on at least a few. And I wouldn't hesitate to estimate for, 3, 4, 5, kind of look at your historical, historical actions in the program, in the RMP program. For those districts that kind of historically haven't seen any RMPs, I mean, we're seeing a few more RMPs come into the southwest side of the state. Where, we've had 1 or 2 pop up with a planner, but we're not seeing a whole lot of activity outside of kind of our regular RMP territory that we've already seen a lot of activity in. So I think, we can certainly, I'll make a request to the RMP staff to see if they have any further guidance on that. In the instruction document, let me pull that up real quick. Can you guys see that? Kendall, can you shake your head if you can see the attachment? Okay. In the instruction document, if you go down to the RMP section, we do actually have a little bit of guidance, which is basically what I just told you, kind of base it on some historical knowledge of the RMP program and what your district has done with the RMPs in the past few years. It's kind of how we feel about CREP too. Some years you get a lot of CREP and other years you don't get very much CREP, or if any. And the best thing you can do is kind of just base it on some historical knowledge, which if you're a new staffer could be very challenging. So don't hesitate to reach out individually to me or the RMP staff to get a better feel for what your numbers should look like. Yeah, see, the estimated should be based on historical or projected RMP workload. I think historical is kind of the key word there for those districts that maybe haven't had any RMPs this past year, but had 6 or 7 the year before. I mean, really do think about what status those RMPs are in and base it on that. Did I add to the confusion on that? Okay. Kendall, are there any more questions on that on the chat box?
No, not at this time. If folks want to come off mute and connect with Claire directly, this is a perfect time. Otherwise, I'll keep monitoring the chat box.
Okay. Okay, it's kind of quiet. So if anybody wants to just, interrupt with a question, feel free. Let's see. Yeah. When in doubt, go back to the instruction document. Every question you have, we have tried to prepare for in that instruction document. So like with the RMPs, we're saying kind of try to reference your historical RMP numbers or your historical CREP numbers and see, certainly use a year that you've actually had RMP contracts or CREP contracts. So we've tried to really think through all the questions you could come up with and put them into that instruction document as much as possible. If you have any questions outside of that, or you're still, wanting to make sure you're putting this number in right, or this number just isn't ridiculously high, or maybe this number is coming in too low and you want to talk through it, don't hesitate to call your peer review committee representative, who I'll list in a minute, your CDC, or call me. Just don't hesitate to reach out to me at all. I'm always available here to help you guys. So when in doubt, go back to the instruction document or ask a friend. Your peer review committee. So this is made up of Soil and Water Conservation District staffers, DCR staff like myself, CDCs, and VASWCD representatives. Really, the purpose is to ensure that templates have been completed consistently and that folks have followed the instructions, and that budget needs have actually been addressed. We have had a number of times where we have reached out to a district saying, hey, we think you need to actually ask for more. So we do make those kind of outreach efforts as well. This committee does not make recommendations to DCR on any of the base TA recommendations or anything like that. They are really there just to ensure accurate information is being represented. For this peer review committee, we provide comparative information for all the attachment E's. So we provide like average numbers as well as total numbers. And we kind of go through each district to see, if there are any major outliers. And we're looking for major outliers here. A little bit high or a little bit low, okay, you're probably fine. But if you're, coming back with, I need 7 new employees for my $1 million program, you're going to be flagged as a major outlier. So, just think through, try to really be as, accurate as possible. Some of the outliers that come back, we don't see a lot of really high numbers generally. There's very few outliers over the years. Again, our biggest area of outliers are actually CREP estimates for FTEs, not the number of CREP, amount of CREP going onto the template, but actually the FTEs to implement CREP is usually the number one kind of flag that we see. So, and then again, if there's missing data or something didn't add up right, or we just simply want a little clarification on why that request might be what it is, one of us will contact either your representative from the peer review committee or myself, possibly your CDC, will contact you for more information. Sometimes you may be asked to make a correction. Other times it's just more information. And more often than not, it's just more information is needed so that we can feel comfortable moving those numbers forward. This is the list of your area representatives. They're also listed in the instruction document and along with their email and phone numbers. So, don't hesitate to reach out to them if you have questions. The membership changes from time to time. Folks, it's kind of a daunting undertaking to go through all of these attachment Ds with the peer review committee. So, we do change folks out from time to time so they don't get too bored with us. But this is your current peer review committee. So the next step, this is the last slide of my presentation, but we are going into look at an actual sample attachment D template. So don't log off yet. So the next steps, after this training, go home and read the instructions as you're working through this template, and then read the instructions again. Like, you cannot read the instructions enough. They really do hopefully help. Obviously complete the template and it goes for board approval. And then the template is to be submitted with your end of year reports by July 15th. You need to send a signed copy to your CDC, just a PDF of it is fine. But I need the electronic Excel document so that I can get those average numbers, get those, rolling totals of all the 47 districts rolled up. Those are the numbers that really get used for budget decisions and advocacy tools, are those rolled up numbers and those average numbers. So make sure you send me the Excel document. If you send me a PDF, I will write you back saying, please send me the Excel document, because I absolutely have to have that. So yeah. So if you guys, Kendall, you want to check the chat box for me?
I do. So we have a couple questions. The first, I will reiterate, we will be sending out this recording of the presentation as well as the materials Blair has to all of the participants today.
Yes.
I know we had that question, are the templates somewhere on the website for download? Your district should have the attachment D, but again, Blair will be sharing some of these documents with us as well as the attachment D itself, and we'll be sending it out to all of the attendees by tomorrow. You'll be getting it from Shannon Mitchum in our office. The other question I have is, should we be comparing our operation to what other districts are doing? How does that really work with peer review? And yeah, Blair, I'm going to leave that hard one for you.
It's a hard one. Every district is so unique. You know, some districts we have a handful of districts that cover one county. And we have some districts that cover 3, 4, 5 counties. So comparing yourself to your neighbor is really hard. You know, district salaries are all across the board. District healthcare benefits are all across the board. Some districts participate in local choice. Others have health insurance through their you know, localities. Some don't offer healthcare at all. You know, it's all over the board. So comparing yourself to a neighboring district is really difficult. And while there might be some similarities, every district is unique. And so a comparison may not be as helpful as you hope for it to be. And then maybe it is. Maybe you guys are really similar in how you handle certain things, and a comparison, or maybe you have a question and you want to know how your neighbor is handling that type of data entry. Certainly call up your friend and say, hey, you know, how is your thought process working on entering this kind of information? And maybe they've got some tips to help you as you work through your thought processes. But I think certainly doing a large comparison of actual numbers in your template versus what's in your neighboring district's template would be really challenging and not necessarily very representative of your district. Anything else, Kendall? Okay. So I'm going to pull up first the instruction document, just so you guys know what it looks like. So about, I'm trying to remember what day it was, back in April, I did send the instruction document, the attachment D template, as well as the cost share, the level funding and increased funding cost share scenarios each district should be using for filling out these templates. You should have received those in an email. And if you didn't, the emails go to the administrative staff and the district manager staff for those districts that have district managers. So if you are an admin staff or a district manager that did not receive the budget template documents, you know, please let me know. That means you're probably not on my distribution list, which I do check with the CDCs constantly. And every time I get an update from a district, it immediately gets changed. So hopefully we've got everybody captured there. And usually the CDCs are like quick to catch if one of their districts is missing from the list. They do a really good job of cross-checking that sent to category in the email headlines. So hopefully everybody's gotten it. It does not get sent out directly to directors. However, district staff obviously filling this out, having it board approved. So district directors should be seeing it at some point in the process. This is the instruction document. It starts off with a lot of my slides. We're pretty repetitive of the instruction document. So a lot of the first 2 pages, there's the history and the description of the document and what we use it for today. And then it goes into kind of like your main 4 sections and your main parts on some tips on how to fill those out. Again, here are the numbers on page, this is just like page 2. Here are the numbers for your FTE calculations to think about. What is an FTE really look like in terms of hours a year, because you're surprised at how many hours just a quarter of an FTE actually works. And it gives some tips and stuff that we'll talk through about how to fill out each section. So here, this kind of covers like your major categories, but then it does break down into each little funding section that is represented on the template. And those breakdowns start on page 4. Where we talk about here's how you get started, and then we work our way down the document in order of the sections as they are presented in the template. So I'm not actually going to go through this instruction document with you, because we're going to walk through an attachment D, which I have obviously pre-filled out following the instruction document, because as someone who works so intimately with this document, I still constantly reference the instructions. So please, always go back to the instructions with questions. It is 18 pages, but the last couple pages of the instruction document, I'm sorry if scrolling is going to make you nauseous. The last couple pages of the instructions document are actually some sample mileage sheets and some sample worksheets that folks have used over the years to assist them with filling out their budget template numbers. So there's some really useful documents down here, and even a sample of the environmental education section, so that you just to help folks as much as we possibly can. So don't forget to take a look at those as well. The budget template that I have pre-filled out, I probably need to make it, is it too small to read? Okay, I have an extended monitor, so the numbers look bigger on my screen than they probably do on most of yours. So hopefully this is a little bit bigger and everybody can see the numbers well enough. I was going to do a live demo of me actually typing in the numbers, but that seemed daunting and it seemed like it would take forever, and talking and typing may not always go well. So I've gone ahead and I've pre-filled out certain sections of this attachment D. I am pretending to be my own SWCD, representing 2 localities with 3 employees currently. So this is Blair's Soil and Water Conservation District. The first thing after I fill out my SWCD name, my number of localities, and my current FTEs, the first thing I actually want to do is I want to come down to my cost share program, and I want to go ahead and enter the level funding and the increased funding numbers that DCR sent me. And that document that we emailed out looks like this. So you have your base level funding. So I'm pretending to be a Bay district because it was just the first one on the list. So I'm going to type in, my base Bay level funding in that one cell. And then in the increased level funding column, I'm going to type in my increased Bay funding. And that's really going to guide all of my numbers throughout the rest of this document. So I want to make sure I know what my level and increased funding levels are, funding amounts are, before I really start working even on my operational section. Because this year we have actually implemented a increased funding category for your operational section. We really did this because we hear districts when they say, if you give us more cost share, we're going to have more administrative costs, because there is more behind the scenes administrative work that needs to take place as well. Program support for our technical employees. There's more paper that needs to be printed. There's more checks that have to be written, things like that. So we really are trying to capture, if we give you, increased cost share funding, what does that also mean for your needs as a administrative staff person as well? So at my level funding of $500,000 in cost share, I only need 1 FTE of an administrative support person. Now, when you go to fill out your FTEs per section, it should be representative of the FTEs you think you actually need to meet the needs of the program at that level of funding, not how many FTEs you currently have employed, because we all know that districts do a lot of work per person. So really represent the FTEs you think you would need for my template, a $500,000 cost share program. I need one administrative support person. At minimum, every district should ask for one administrative operational person.
Blair?
I'm gonna go to, do I hear a question?
Yeah, this is Greg Witch-Ellens in Culpeper. You seem to be insinuating that central operations is only capturing needs for the ag cost share program. I don't believe that's the accurate message that should be sent out. Central operations is really for
everything.
all code requirements. Yeah, I think that should be clarified.
Yes, and you can see that more closely. And I'm sorry, Greg, you're right. It represents everything. I mean, this is representing your rent and utilities, your field gear, your computers, your support expenses, your director travel training. But it's support for your DAM programs. It's support for your education program. It's support for anything and everything the district does. Any type of administrative, operational expenses the district have should be captured here, not just in relation to cost share. So
I think you have another clarifying comment in the chat that makes sure it is correct. If we need administrative help towards cost share, we should capture that under cost share, not central ops.
You can, so in this particular breakdown, yes, it depends on what your, really what your programmatic support depends on. When we get into the cost share section, we're really looking at technical staff because we're capturing the technical training they need to attend, the certifications your district might require that they have, and things like that. If someone is doing more of the administrative side of the cost share program, it's perfectly acceptable to capture that in the central ops section.
Blair, this is Greg again. I'm gonna have to jump in here. That's not consistent with the messaging we've done from the beginning of this process. What we've always heard, and I believe Mr. Glover was really clear about this one, asked too many times, was you need to capture all program costs down there under the cost share program.
Well,
so if you've got
in the cost share program, you're capturing vehicles, you're capturing training meetings, personnel and fringe benefits, but you're not capturing, the postage that you might need for sending out your sign up postcards.
Correct. But to get
computer needs.
To get back to Sharon's question, which she put in the chat box, she was asking if she needs more administrative help to deliver the cost share program, then that should go in the cost share portion, the cost share program portion of the template, and that's correct.
For staff hours, yes, but as far as computers that might need to be bought, or the copy machines for more contracts you need to print and things like that, that's all captured under central operations as well.
That's right. I just thought I heard you insinuating that any administrative support for anything should be at the top, and I don't think that's what we've always said.
Sorry for the confusion. And thank you for chiming in, Greg.
You're welcome.
So at an increase at my level funding, I need one FTE. And my increased funding, I might be requesting another additional half a person for various reasons. And then you come through here and you calculate out your staffing expenses. How much with my personnel and fringe benefits, that's your healthcare, your retirement, your FICA, your, all of those things that go into and that you see come out of your paycheck on that paycheck stub where the government takes too much money. All of that gets calculated into this. And you think about that, okay, well, for one person, I need $75,000. And I should say, these are completely made up numbers. So please do not take these numbers as any reality of any kind, and do not be offended if I have a really low number in here somewhere, or do not say, oh, I'm not paying people enough if you think I have a really high number in here, because they are truly just made up fictional numbers. They look nice on paper, that is it. They are not based in any reality. So, and then with my expected increased administrative costs, I might need to pay my half of an employee an additional $25,000. And those are my needs. And I'm saying here that I have increased need for program support across the board. Maybe I'm doing increased need for any number of reasons, as Greg has said. With another person, and maybe down below I'm requesting an additional staffer for cost share, I currently spend $18,000 on rent and utilities, but I may need to increase my square footage just by a little bit. Or with just a couple more people in the building, you expect to have higher energy uses, higher water bills, things like that. You may need to increase your rent and utilities by a couple $1,000s or more. Maybe you need to move to a bigger space. This is that area to capture those needs for your rent and utilities. Director travel and training. This includes their mileage to and from board meetings, their board meeting lunches, their mileage to and from committee meetings. If you do those, many of them do them on different days. Trainings like going to the annual meeting, that's their hotel costs, and their registration fees for annual meeting, things like that. I've estimated $7,000 at my base level funding, but maybe with all this new cost share we're getting, that's just an example, could be for anything else. Maybe with all this new cost share I'm getting, we're going to need to have more frequent committee meetings. So I'm going to add some additional $1,000 to make up for the additional mileage my directors are coming for those committee meetings now. In my world, I didn't think of adding additional training. I said, they're still going to have the same training opportunities and things like that, but we're definitely going to have more committee meetings. So I'm going to throw in a little bit more to make up for those committee meetings. And you can see in my comment section over here that I've included, my mileage, my board meeting lunches. I sent 4 directors to annual meeting. And then with my increased funding, I'm still only sending 4 directors to annual meeting. I'm still paying for board meeting lunches, but now I've got additional committee meetings. And so I've noted that in my comment section over here. For equipment and field gear, at level funding, I've made this request. With increased funding, I've asked for $4,500 more. I've come over here to make a comment because that at level funding is basically my copy machine maintenance, my phone lines. Maybe my administrative staff needs a new laptop this year, or maybe we're switching from a desktop to a laptop because of telework situations, especially in the time of, that we're facing now. So, we have an expected expense of a new laptop for our administrative staff. But maybe with increased funding, hey, I want all of my field staff to have tablets. I think that'll help them in the field because they can, access the tracking program and things like that. So we're going to get our tablets field staff, and that's going to include a data plan. And if we get a new staff member, they're going to need a computer too. So let's, go ahead and throw that estimate in there as well. So I'm going to need an additional $4,500 to cover those costs. Yes, Kendall.
Claire, this is probably a good stopping point to ask a couple questions that have come into the chat box. We have a very active dam community work, even though we only have 1 dam. When I estimated my FTE for dams, I was considered an outlier. This is potentially by the peer review committee afterwards. Should we reference our unique situation in the notes? Is this the best way to handle our situation so we do not get called out in the future? And that's not just necessarily related to dam
Right,
issues.
that's related to any category where you feel like you might, you know, hey, I've been called on this before, but my numbers are really truly accurate. Please definitely make some sort of notation in the note section. That really helps us. And any explanation will certainly, you know, help maybe prevent a call from the peer review committee or myself, or at least, you know, give us a little bit more information that we're looking for. So yeah, definitely use the note section. It really is helpful. Now, for training purposes, I have added a lot of notes in. Now, some of these notes are actually just things that are also in the instruction document that say this is what should be included in this line item. But I went ahead and put them in there just for an example purpose. But anytime you have, you know, what seems like maybe a high number, go ahead and put a note in so that we know what your thought process was putting that in, so that when we do these roll-ups and we do these averages, we have something to look back on. And like you said, Kendall, that doesn't apply just to the dams, that applies to any of the categories. So,
Yes,
so
question in relation to that. And someone else has commented, we have 8 dams. Where do we put hours for maintenance when staff is doing the work?
yeah, so we actually do have an FTE for dam maintenance. There's a, let me get through central ops and then we'll work through dams, because I'm getting ready to get there and it'll show you where to put the hours for dam maintenance staff. Okay, so equipment, you know, we've listed that out as field gear, computers, copiers, phones, etc. It can be for any of the programs that your districts operate. Support expenses, that's looking at dues to the association, postage for, I don't know, mailing your bills and sending out communications to your producers about a farm day or the sign up period. Any kind of supplies, it covers, like if you're hosting your own website, you know, it covers your website fees. A plethora of things. There's an even longer list in the instruction template of what could be included here. You know, it can be a pretty high number because there's a lot of things that come for support expenses. So at level funding, I'm expecting $16,500 for my small district. And I'm going to increase that by $3,500 because we're going to do a lot more outreach about some sort, you know, maybe about our cost share program. We're going to need to order more folders for all the wonderful new cost share contracts we're going to have. But again, as Greg pointed out too, this could be support products for any program that your district is, you know, operating. Staff training and meetings. This is about your administrative operational staff. This is not your technical staff. Technical staff are captured further below. DAM staff are captured further below. Education staff are captured in a section below. So this is really about your admin ops folks, your district managers, perhaps, you know, people working in an operational administrative capacity. You know, this is their training and meetings. This is their registration fees, their hotel fees, their meal costs, things like that. Yep. Hold on, I'm having a hard time hearing you.
How about now?
Oh, that's better.
Okay. I want to clarify something that you said. You said that central ops should contain all of your, you said support expenses associated with all of the programs your district offers. I want to clarify and make sure that we're on the same page. I think you mean all the programs that the district offers that are required by code. In other words, if you offer some ancillary programs, that is not intended to be covered in central ops, rather should be covered elsewhere.
Thank you, Megan.
Am I correct? I mean.
This section is intended for paying your bills, keeping the lights on, paying your rent, you know, things like that. It's for keeping the district open and functioning. Vehicles, obviously, if you're attending trainings or maybe you don't have meetings on site at your district office, maybe your meetings are off site, any of your vehicle mileage for your central operations staff is covered here. And that is, this section can be a little bit funky and you need to make sure you read the instructions. If you do not have a vehicle mileage log in your car, which is basically required by the desktop guide now, so you should, but if you do not separate out what your mileage is used for, whether it's operational expense or a cost share expense, then you can put the total mileage of your vehicle in this line item. However, if you put the total expense of your vehicle in this line item, please put a note on the side that that is what you have done. And I do not include vehicle mileage in any of the other categories, unless it's a separate vehicle. In that case, also make a note. Like your dam maintenance staff may have a whole separate vehicle that they take, so you can put mileage down here. But this mileage, this is representative of the vehicle being, you know, driven, and you don't separate out your categories for the mileage, you know, the number of miles that your truck is driven for cost share, the number of miles your truck is driven for, you know, central operations type activities, then, you know, put all of the mileage here, but then don't break your mileage down further down the document. If you do keep more thorough vehicle mileage documentation, then this should just represent the vehicle mileage used for central ops type activities. Then when you go down to your cost share section, you have another mileage section where you can say, hey, you know, we drove our car this many miles, so it's going to cost us this much money, and in the federal rate. So that can be a little bit confusing. It is written in the instructions in the first central ops section when you first get to vehicles. This is either just the admin ops use of the vehicle, or it is the entire use of the vehicles, not broken down in any other category. And again, your notes section is your friend here if you are not breaking this down through the categories. And then your other expenses can be a plethora of things. We have a category here. I kind of opted not to have any other expenses. I feel like it's not very often that we actually see the other expense line frequently used on these documents, but there are times where we have, you know, some things that maybe don't quite fit into the other categories, but you want to capture the expense. So again, this is where, you know, this line here is open for telling us what those expenses are, but you can also utilize the notes section. Another thing I do want to note too, that I should have mentioned earlier, are all these little red arrows, little red, you know, corners. Those are little descriptions of what kind of information should be entered into those cells. So they kind of are aids for the instruction document as well. So just know that they are here for your assistance. If you have a question about what you're supposed to be putting there, you've got the little red square. Also, you have the instruction document. So for those districts that have dams, we do have a dam maintenance section. This first section kind of covers your basic dam maintenance, your mowing, your gate opening, you know, things that you kind of cover with your dam maintenance money from DCR. You know, we have, in my little dam world, I have 3 dams, and I don't spend a lot of time on them except for some regular maintenance. So I only have a 0.1 FTE, 10th of an FTE for my dams, and here are my expenses associated with having that FTE. But over here, you know, I'm saying for 3 dams, it's costing me $7,500 to do my twice a year mowing, my debris removal, my gate operation, my truly basic dam maintenance, things that I expect to have to do pretty much every year, all the time. For travel and training, maybe the only thing I'm really going to is the dam owners work group meeting. So I've added a little bit of meal expenses and for travel and training. And then of course, mileage for going to and from the dams and going to and from the dam work group meetings and things like that. Again, this is really about your general basic dam maintenance projects that you do all the time if you're a dam owner. What we have new this year that I did not fill out separately, but what I do have new this year is your dam repair and rehabilitation. This is for, this is a data gathering section for us. And it's really supposed to represent those bigger dam repair and rehabilitation projects that you have going on. DCR funded through small dam repair or funded through another source. Especially those big rehab projects. This data section is really helpful for your neighboring districts with dams. If they're getting ready to go through a rehabilitation project, it would give them kind of an idea of just how much staff time is expected to monitor those rehabilitation projects and to make sure they're going through. So this is a data gathering site. This should be representative of projects that you actually have recently completed or have ongoing. This is not necessarily a projection section of the document. If you know you have a dam rehabilitation scheduled for next year, well, that would be fine. But if you are like, well, maybe one day I'll have a project, like this is not the place for that. Like one day I might have a project. This is really a data gathering section for us to start seeing, you know, how many hours are actually being put into some of these bigger projects. What is it really taking out of districts to get these projects done? So that's really what this section is about, because we have had a number of larger dam projects happening over the last couple of years, and we have a number of them, you know, on the books being, you know, underway right now, and a couple coming up in the next year. So that's really where we're hoping to capture some of this data to be informational. Okay, so down here, I've done some work in the Ag B&P section. Again, I'm pretending to be a BADE-based district. So I've got my level funding and my increased funding from the numbers that DCR sent out. And I'm saying, you know, for my level funding, I need 1.5 employees. And for my increased funding, I need an additional half employee. So total, I'm going to need 2 employees to finish, you know, to spend $1 million and make sure I'm following through on all of those projects. So, and then over here, I've implemented my, you know, personnel fringe, my training and travel. I mean, my training and my mileage expenses. Those categories follow all the same rules as the categories that we've already filled out. So, you know, I've just kind of thought through what are my additional training needs going to be for a new staff person. And because I've got a new staff person, we've got double the cost share, we might have, you know, double, triple the field visits. So you're going to need more mileage. So, you know, kind of think through that kind of stuff pretty well. That's as much detail as we go into for the cost share program. Moving down to RMPs, I am going off of a, you know, historically I've had a few RMPs. So I'm going to say I'm going to be reviewing 3 RMP plans perhaps. That might only take, you know, 1/10 of an FTE. Here are my expenses related to that. My staff training and meetings, you know, that includes trainings for RMP, might have to go to an RMP training, might have to call Barbara and Scott and say, hey, we need some training here, so that, you've put together, they've put together, maybe you have to go to their computer training to get into the RMP module because you haven't been in it before. So 3 RMPs, and then I've got, some reviews. I've got to go do some field checks and things like that. So here's some mileage related to RMPs. Same with the resource management plans to inspect. I really only plan to inspect 2 RMPs. Maybe last year I actually had, 5 RMP applications, and I know that 2 of them are going to come through for certification. And I know I'm going to have to go out on those inspections, on those field visits. So I've got some hours in and staff time in here. CREP, maybe we've gotten 1 CREP contract historically. So again, I've put in a small FTE amount and some small expenses related to that. Maybe I need to do a field visit for CREP, maybe not. That all depends on how involved your district is with CREP and within RCS and the partnership. So this number, varies greatly from district to district, as does the RMP program. Those are numbers we see kind of all over the board. So your notes section is usually very helpful here too. But also, this is one of those times where I might go to the RMP staff and say, hey, does this number make sense to you for this district? Or I might go to David Bryan and say, hey, or I might look in the tracking program and say, hey, this district has actually, done a little bit of CREP over the years. Yeah, this makes sense, or they need to ask for more, something along those lines. So questions for any of these sections? No? Oh.
I possibly have a question. One submitted directly to me. Staff at our district office were recently told that when filling out attachment D, DCR is looking for a ratio of roughly 700,000 in FTE. Is that accurate?
Wait, say that again?
Is there any recommendation or reference from DCR that there should be a formula for a ratio of cost share and FTEs?
Oh, no, because I think if we were to do that, it would be really challenging, because we have districts who are very agronomic based practices and districts that are very structural practices, and they take different amounts of time and different numbers of field visits and things like that. So your mileage is going to be really different. Your training needs are going to be different. Your level of staffing might be different. So I think it would be really hard for us to put together a formula that would actually fit all district scenarios. I think it is good to look at kind of what cost share level are you operating currently, and how is your staff currently handling it? Is 1 staff person enough for $500,000, depending on the type of practices you're putting in the ground? And 1 staff person may be enough. I mean, we have districts currently operating, a $2 million program with 1.5 technical staffers, because that works for them. And they managed to make it work. Do they want more? Maybe, yeah, maybe they could definitely use more, and this would be the chance to kind of ask for that. But I think making a formula that works for everybody to be a recommendation would be really challenging, because of all the different scenarios you run into. And then again, you've got, am I spending that $1 million in one area? Am I spending that $1 million across 5 counties? And that changes, just even your travel time to get to BMPs and stuff. So there's a lot of scenarios that go into how many FTEs are recommended for an amount of cost share, that I think are just so variable across all the districts that it really is difficult to put any kind of recommendation on that. I will say, though, just to add to the confusion a little bit, if I will, if I give you, $1 million and you tell me that you need 5 additional FTEs to put that on the ground, it's going to get flagged as kind of a question. I mean, that's a little high. If you can justify it and verify it, fine, but you're going to get called for something as extreme as that. So.
Blair, keep moving. It's 2:20. I know we're starting to lose.
Okay, I'm just about through. I'm sorry. Just about finished. So we've talked about CREP and resource management plans. So I'm actually going to come down to the environmental education section because it's kind of our next weird section. I mean, above it, you see a Chesapeake Bay Preservation Act section. Again, like the dam rehab and repair section, this is a data gathering section. It does not apply to every district, and it does not apply to every Bay district at this point. It just depends on your agreements with your localities, your agreements with DEQ. So not every Bay district even fills out this section at this point in time. So that's going to be very district specific. For those districts that have that section, if they have questions on it, reach out to one of us. But environmental education is one that pretty much every district fills out. But it is a section that's a little bit different. It's very similar. I based, when we added the dam rehab and rehabilitation section, repair and rehabilitation section in, I kind of based it off of the environmental education section, where we want to know, as a data gathering point, we want to know what are the educational things that districts are doing. So Blair's Pretend District is doing Envirothon and a poster contest. I'm doing a summer watershed camp for middle schoolers. And then I might be doing 2 days of a farm field, school farm days. And possibly we have a $1,000 scholarship. I just kind of picked a few environmental education things that I see constantly, throughout the state. Magically, I'm going to do that with half an FTE. I don't know if that works or not, but I'm going to pretend that I'm doing that with a half a person, half a full-time person. And these are my expenses related to that. But then we have this section here for program costs. This is how much I have budgeted to run all of these programs and my $1,000 scholarship. Hopefully I have a farmer who is voluntarily hosting farm days, and my summer watershed camp might be hosted at a state park facility that doesn't charge me very much, or at a church site that gives us to this facility in kind, something like that. So maybe I'm providing some supplies for like hosting a local Envirothon competition, things of that nature. So this is Blair's make-believe education environmental education section. Again, all of these rules follow the same rules as above. The only thing that's really different is programmatic costs listed down here. And other programs and projects, obviously we see a lot of 319 listed here. We see VCAP listed here. And any other kind of unique grant projects you might be working with other groups with, Trout Unlimited or something else. From VCAP, I'm going to say we're using another 1/10 of a person for some VCAP contracts. Maybe we're not a super big VCAP district. So that all down here comes to grand totals. So even though I currently only have 3 employees, at level funding, I really should be operating with 3.35 employees. And then with the increase in cost share and things like that, I'm going to ask for an additional 1 FTE. How that is split up between all of the programs, is broken down up here. Here are all of our costs for level funding. Here are all of our costs for increased funding with the grand totals. So at the level funding, at the level funding amounts, I really need $326,000. But for increased funding, I'm going to request $412,000. So it shows us, where the needs are. As I was filling out this one first, Kendall, do we have any more questions? I've lost my.
Hey, it's Shannon. Kendall had to step away for a minute.
Okay, I was gonna say I've lost some controls here.
Right. Do you have everything you need as far as controls, or?
I think once I stop presenting, I think that'll make a difference. Do we have any questions in the chat box?
Yep. Are we to consider that under education that we want to plan for a COVID-free world?
That is such a hard question. I mean, I think in an ideal world, we're all hoping, schools are starting to go back, vaccinations are going up every day. We're all hoping to be back in person, and this is projection for 2013. So I think that there are certain times where we're certainly going to go back to an in-person COVID-free world at some level. I think you can also certainly, it would be safe to say, hey, we've been really successful with some of these being online classes, and maybe we're going to continue that, and what kind of program costs are related to that. So I think it's safe to say for 2023, we hope that this is all going to be a COVID-free, back to in-person world, but we also do really recognize that it's never going to be the same. So, hopefully we go back to a COVID-free world. So I would say yes, go ahead and plan for the best.
That's all we have right now.
Oh, okay. So that's where we're at with the attachment D. However, while I was filling this out in preparation for today's training, I realized there is actually a formula mistake at the bottom of the page. So when this training is completed, I will be sending out to my admin and district managers list to all 47 districts. I'll be sending out an updated budget template along with the slides from this PowerPoint. And I'll also, again, include the instructions and the budget scenarios, just so that everything's in one nice big email for you.
Blair, can you, this is Shannon, can you copy me on that as well, so that when I
Yes.
send out the link for the recording, I can include those again?
Yes, definitely. Think of okay. Oh, great, Michelle. I'm glad this has been somewhat helpful. I think I've stopped sharing my screen so I can go back to normal views here. Okay. So again, if anybody has any questions as they're filling this out, contact the peer review committee, contact me. We're happy to help. For new employees, certainly don't hesitate to reach out. For seasoned employees, this doesn't seem to get a whole lot easier with each iteration.
Hey, Blair.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I know people are going to start jumping off here because they sense the end. And I wanted to make a comment for everybody to hear. I thought we had messaged this pretty clearly, but I saw Michelle Carter's comment here, and it got my attention. And from the beginning, this whole exercise and document, it's a needs assessment. It is not an annual budgeting tool. You need to let those words sink in clearly. So you need to think, people need to be thinking about 2013, 2014. What does my district need to really perform and, do what we need to do to serve our clientele and our geography? So I'll stop there. But again, it's not thinking about what your budget is for next year. It's a needs assessment, so we can fully inform the General Assembly about what really is needed out here.
Yeah, this is about looking forward and trying to best plan for what our futures could be, and hopefully are, with increased funding. So
Thank you.
Definitely, this is not a financial planning tool for current situations. This is a needs assessment for what might be, which is why we call it the FY 2023 attachment D, because we're hoping that in FY 2023, maybe some of these numbers will be close to. Okay, so Shannon, I'm going to turn it back to you at the association. I'm not getting any more comments in the comment section. And it looks like people are starting to jump off. So again, I'll be sending out some documents as a follow-up here. But other than that, that kind of ends my presentation. So if anybody wants to stay on and chat about anything, I'll be here for a while longer. Thanks to everybody for hanging in there with me.
Thank you, Blair. Thank you, everyone. I will be sending out a link tomorrow to the recording and all the documents that go with it.
Blair, thanks for a great presentation. If there are questions, Blair will remain on the line. Additionally, just as a reminder, we are postponing the Admin Ops Committee meeting on Monday. If there are topics you want to speak about in an unstructured setting, though, let me know and we can accommodate that, or stay on the line right now and we can chat. Thank you.
It's so hard.
Hi, Tyree.
Thanks, sweetie.
Thanks, guys. Sorry, we're getting a little antsy and ready to head out on vacation, and
That's right.
wanted to wave and play along too. Attachment D is a really invigorating stuff.
Yeah. It's kind of dry.
A little dry, but you still had some good questions. Thank you, Shannon, for
No problem.
taking care of that. Anything else, Blair?
No, yeah, I think we're good. I think folks are just kind of jumping off, so.
So before you go, Kendall, so I have 20 applications so far. I mean, well, and obviously the deadline for scholarships. So that seems rather low.
It's low compared to past years.
It's very low. So I don't know. I don't know if I should send out an email to the districts. I mean, that's over half that haven't submitted, or
It's a fair
or
question.
what to do.
Guess it's like easily 15 lower than past
Right.
years.
Yeah. I'm going to look back and see what districts in the past have usually consistently submitted one and maybe check in with them to make sure. But yeah, it just seems kind of low.
Do that before you reach out to the committee and submit, just to be sure. I'd hate to have missed something. before
Right.
we start the review process, but
Okay.
I guess I'm not surprised entirely, though. I imagine in a virtual setting, it is a little harder to recruit scholarship applications, and at
Yeah.
least last year it was entirely virtual by that point.
Right. Yeah, that's true. Okie dokie.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Enjoy. Have
Yeah.
safe travels.
Thank you. You know where to find me if you need me.
Yep.
Guys, unless there are questions for Blair, I'm gonna wrap us up.
Yep. Looks good. Thanks, Kendall.
Thanks. Have a good one.